Lena was a black waitress at Joe's cafe, and she had no idea that on one fateful day she would make a decision involving standing up for Cristiano Ronaldo, something no one could have prepared her for. The evening shift at Joe's cafe was always predictable for Lena, a 31-year-old waitress with a bright smile and a knack for making every customer feel welcome. Located in a quiet corner of the small town of Maplewood near Los Angeles, Joe's was a haven for the older locals who came in to enjoy muffins and tea while chatting about times gone by and watching their favorite sport, football. For Lena, the cafe was more than just a job. It was a comfort zone, a place where she knew everyone by name. But tonight, that familiar rhythm was about to change. The bell above the door chimed softly, signaling a new arrival. Lena glanced up casually, expecting another regular, but her heart skipped a beat when she saw who walked in. It was Cristiano Ronaldo of Real Madrid, one of the most celebrated athletes in the world. Cristiano was well known in Southern California due to his frequent visits during off-season breaks. For a moment, Lena froze, unable to believe her eyes. He was dressed simply in a navy blue jacket and sneakers, looking like he was trying to stay under the radar. Even in his understated attire, though, his presence filled the entire room. The older patrons at the counter turned to look, whispering among themselves. Some craned their necks, trying to confirm if it was really him. Lena's pulse quickened. She'd seen him dominate on the field countless times, but she never imagined he'd walk into her cozy little cafe. Lena was popularly known for her warmth and attentiveness, having worked at Joe's for 4 years, memorizing the orders and quirks of the regulars. The fact that Cristiano Ronaldo, a global superstar, had come to their humble cafe was a big deal not only for her, but also for the other regulars, many of whom were huge fans. Gathering her composure, she approached his table with her usual friendly demeanor. "Good evening. What can I get you tonight?" Cristiano smiled warmly, a kindness in his eyes that immediately put her at ease. "Just a cup of tea, black, and maybe a slice of whatever cake you've got." "Coming right up," Lena replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. As she returned to the counter, she was aware of the buzz his presence was causing. The regulars were murmuring, some smiling in awe, others shaking their heads. As she placed the tea and cake in front of him, she tried to act normal. "Here you go. Enjoy." "Thanks," Cristiano said, offering her another smile before turning his gaze out the window. Lena couldn't help but watch him for a moment. There was something unassuming about him despite his fame. He seemed lost in thought, maybe even a little tired. But not everyone shared her admiration. Harold, one of the older regulars and an avid supporter of Barcelona FC, was infamous for his bluntness and overly critical opinions. Lena was thrilled to serve someone of Ronaldo's stature. She admired him not just for his incredible talent on the field, but for his philanthropic work off it. Yet, as Harold stood and approached Ronaldo's table, her excitement quickly turned to unease. "Excuse me," Harold began, his gruff voice cutting through the cafe chatter. "Aren't you that soccer guy, Cristiano Ronaldo?" Ronaldo looked up, smiling politely. "Yes, that's me." Harold crossed his arms, his face twisted with skepticism. "I've been reading about you. You make millions, but what do you actually do for people who need help? Heard you're pretty stingy with all that cash." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Lena, who was clearing plates at the next table, froze. She glanced at Ronaldo, whose calm demeanor showed no discomfort. "I try to give back where I can," Ronaldo replied evenly. "I've supported education programs, built soccer fields for kids, and helped fund charities." Harold scoffed. "Sounds like a PR stunt to me. You big shots only care about your image." Murmurs spread across the cafe, some customers nodding in agreement. Lena felt a surge of indignation. Harold's words were unfair and misinformed, and she couldn't stand by while someone she respected was berated. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. "Harold," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside. "That's not true. Cristiano Ronaldo has done more than most people could dream of. He's given scholarships to students who couldn't afford college, donated to disaster relief efforts, and supported mental health initiatives. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Harold's brow furrowed. "And how do you know he's not just doing it for the headlines?" Lena countered firmly. "Because actions speak louder than words. I've read about the kids whose lives have changed because of his foundation. He doesn't have to do any of that, but he does because he cares." Ronaldo looked at her, surprise and gratitude flickering across his face. Lena continued, her voice gaining strength. "We live in a world where people with the means don't always step up. When someone like Cristiano does, it's not fair to tear them down." The cafe buzzed with whispers again. Some patrons appeared moved by her defense, while others remained skeptical. Harold huffed and returned to his seat, muttering under his breath. But the damage was done. Lena noticed Mr. Thompson, the cafe's owner, stepping out from the kitchen, his expression dark. "Lena," he said sharply, motioning her over. She approached, her heart sinking. "What were you thinking?" he asked in a low voice. "You don't argue with customers, especially not regulars like Harold." "I wasn't arguing," she replied, her voice trembling. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be treated that way." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "This is a business, not a debate club. Harold and the other regulars are the backbone of this place. If they're upset, we lose their loyalty. I can't have that. I think it's best if you find another job." Her vision blurred as tears welled up, but she held her head high, refusing to break in front of him. She glanced at Ronaldo, who had risen and was watching the exchange, a look of regret on his face. "I'm sorry," Ronaldo said lightly as she passed by, gathering her things. "Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that, but it meant a lot." Lena nodded, managing a weak smile. "You're welcome." The next morning, Lena woke up, feeling like her world was crumbling. Her usual enthusiasm for the day was replaced by a deep sense of loss. She had always loved working at Joe's Cafe, loved the camaraderie with the regulars and the comforting routine of brewing tea and serving muffins. But now, the sting of humiliation from the previous night felt fresh. Fired for standing up for someone she admired, Lena couldn't shake the disbelief that Mr. Thompson had let her go so easily. Nor could she forget the way the regulars had looked at her, their silent judgment cutting deeper than Harold's words. The next morning, Lena woke up feeling a heaviness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. The events of the previous night played over and over in her mind like a cruel loop. Joe's Cafe had been her safe space for years, a place of routine, laughter, and familiarity. It was more than just a job. It was a second home. Yet, in just a few moments, she'd lost it all because she couldn't stand by while someone she admired was being bullied. And this time, it wasn't just any ordinary persona, it was Cristiano Ronaldo. Lena thought doing the right thing mattered, but now she wasn't so sure. It seemed like the world didn't care about what was right or wrong. Still, life didn't stop. Rent was due, and bills needed to be paid. Reluctantly, Lena prepared to head back to the cafe one last time to collect her final paycheck. The thought of stepping into that space, facing those same people who had judged her harshly, churned her stomach with anxiety. She could already hear the whispers and see the disapproving glances. But she had no choice. She needed the money to keep herself afloat until she found another job. The morning air was crisp as she walked through the quiet streets of Maplewood. A golden glow from the rising sun bathed the city, but Lena couldn't appreciate it. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts clouded. She resolved to keep her head high, no matter what awaited her. She reminded herself that she had spoken the truth, even when it was hard. As she approached the cafe, something unusual caught her eye. Parked right outside was a sleek, navy blue SUV. Its polished exterior gleamed in the sunlight, looking completely out of place against the modest, slightly weathered facade of Joe's Cafe. Lena hesitated, confused, before pushing open the door. Inside, the usual hum of conversation was absent. Instead, an uneasy silence filled the room. Lena's eyes widened as they landed on Cristiano Ronaldo, seated casually in one of the booths. Despite his relaxed posture, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that commanded attention. His simple attire, jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball, Cap did nothing to mask his star power. Behind the counter, Mr. Thompson stood frozen, his face a mixture of nerves and confusion. The regulars sat unusually subdued, their eyes flicking between Cristiano and Lena. The tension in the room was palpable. "Lena," Cristiano said, standing as she entered. His voice was warm, calm, and inviting. "Can we talk?" Lena's heart pounded as she nodded and crossed the room. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on her, but for once, she didn't care. Following Cristiano to the booth, she slid into the seat across from him, trying to keep her composure despite her racing thoughts. "I couldn't stop thinking about what happened last night," Cristiano began, his tone calm but sincere. "You stood up for me when you didn't have to, and I respect that more than I can say." Lena blinked, unsure of how to respond. "I just thought you deserved someone to stand up for you," she said quietly, her voice almost trembling. "And that's exactly why I'm here," Cristiano continued, leaning forward slightly. "What you did took courage. It showed me the kind of person you are, someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. That's rare, and it's something I deeply admire." Lena tilted her head, confusion mingling with disbelief. "I don't understand," she said. "Why are you here?" Cristiano smiled, his expression kind, yet determined. "My foundation is expanding. We're launching new programs to support underprivileged kids, improve access to education, and create opportunities for people who need a second chance. We need people who are passionate about making a difference, people like you." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely," Cristiano said without hesitation. "I want you to join the team. It's not waiting tables, but it's a chance to be part of something bigger, to use your voice and your heart to help others." For a moment, Lena sat in stunned silence. The weight of his words, the sheer improbability of this offer, left her speechless. Tears welled up in her eyes as the reality began to sink in. She had lost her job, but in its place, she was being offered an opportunity beyond anything she'd ever imagined. "I don't know what to say," she whispered finally, her voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Cristiano said, flashing a grin that made her laugh through her tears. Lena nodded, her resolve finally breaking into a wide, tearful smile. "Yes, absolutely yes." Cristiano reached across the table and shook her hand, sealing the deal. Around them, the cafe remained eerily quiet. The regulars who had once judged her so harshly now sat stunned into silence. Lena couldn't help but glance at Harold, whose expression was a mix of disbelief and what looked like begrudging respect. Mr. Thompson, meanwhile, stood rigid behind the counter, his jaw clenched tightly as he processed what was unfolding. His face betrayed a hint of guilt, but Lena didn't dwell on it. Her focus was on the future. As Cristiano rose to leave, he turned back to Lena. "I'll have someone from my team reach out to you today to get things started. Thank you again for what you did. It meant more than you know." The bell above the door chimed as he walked out, the sound echoing through the cafe like the closing of one chapter and the start of another. Lena sat for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. Then she stood, her resolve firm, and walked to the counter to collect her paycheck. Mr. Thompson handed it to her, his guilt written all over his face. He then grudgingly told her, "Although I feel you shouldn't have done what you did yesterday night, I'm sorry for how badly I might have treated you." Lena met his gaze steadily. "You taught me a valuable lesson," she replied simply. "Sometimes standing up for what's right is worth more than staying quiet to keep a job." With that, she turned and stepped into the sunlight, her heart light with hope. In the weeks that followed, Lena joined Cristiano Ronaldo's foundation and threw herself into work that felt meaningful and fulfilling. She traveled to communities in need, helped organize educational programs, and met countless individuals whose lives were transformed by their efforts. For the first time, she felt like her voice and actions truly mattered. Looking back, Lena realized that losing her job at Joe's Cafe wasn't the end she had feared. It was the beginning of a life filled with purpose. That one chance encounter with Cristiano Ronaldo had changed everything, proving that sometimes standing up for what's right opens doors to a brighter future.